Good morning. We'll be reading out of the Bhagavatam, second canto. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So we're reading Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 6, texts 43 through 45. It's a long one. So let's get started. Aham, Baba, Yagya, Ime, Praja Isha, Daksha Adaya, Ye, Babat, Adaya Cha, Swarloka Pala, Kagaloka Pala, Nriloka Pala, Talaloka Pala, Gandharva, Vidyadara, Charana Isha, Ye, Yaksha, Raksha, Uraga, Naganata, Ye, Va, Rishinam, Rishaba, Pritrinam, Daitya Indra, Siddha Ishvara, Dhanava Indra, Anye, Cha, Ye, Prita, Pishacha, Bhuta, Kushmanda, Yada, Mriga, Pakshiyadisham, Yat, Kimcha, Loke, Bhagavat, Mahasvat, Oja Sahasvat, Balavat, Kshamavat, Shri, Hri, Vibhuti, Atmavat, Adbhuta, Arnam, Tattvam, Param, Puravat, Asvarupam, Aham Bhavo Yagyaime, Aham Bhavo Yagyaime. Wait, no.
Aham Bhavo Yagya Ime Prajasa.
Aham Bhavo Yagyaime Praheja.
Aham Bhavo Yagya Ime Prajasa.
Daksha Dayo Ye Bhavadadasyascha. Swarlokapala Kagalokapala Rilokapala Stalalokapala Gandharva Vidya Daracharanesha Ye Yaksharaksho Ragana Ganata Ye Varishinam Rishava Pritrinam Daityendra Siddheshwara Danavendra Anye Chaye Preta Pishacha Bhuta Kushmanda Yado Mriga Paksha Disha Yatkin Chaloke Bhagavan Mahasvan Oja Sahasvad Balavat Shamavat Shri Hri Vibhutyatmavad Adbhutarnam
Shri Vibhutyatmavad Bhutarnam
Tattvam Param Rupa Svarupam
Tattvam Param Rupa Svarupam
Aham Bhavo Yagyai Me Prahesha
Aham Bhavo Yagyai Me Prajesha
Dakshadayo Ye Bhavadadayascha
Dakshadayo Ye Bhavadadayascha
Svarlokapala Kagalokapala
Svarlokapala Kagalokapala
Trilokapala Stalalokapala
Nilokapala Stalalokapala
Gandharva Vidyadhara Charanesha
Gandharva Vidyadhara Charanesha
Ye Yaksharaksho Raganaganata
Ye Aksharaksho Raganaganata
Ye Varishinam Rishabha Pritrinam
Ye Varishinam Rishabha Pitrinam
Daityendra Siddheshwara Danavendra
Daityendra Siddheshwara Danavendra
Anye Chaye Preta Pishacha Bhuta
Anye Shaye Preta Pisacha Bhuta
Kushmandaya Domnigra Pasha Disha
Kushmandaya Domriga Pakshadisha
Yatkinchaloke Bhagavan Mahasvad
Yatkin Shaloke Bhagavan Mahasvat
Oja Sahasvad Valavat Chamavat
Oja Sahasvat Bhalabhakshamavat
Shri Hri Vibhutyatmavad Bhutarnam
Shri Vibhutyatmavad Bhutaram
Tattvam Param Rupavadasma Rupam.
Tattvam Param Rupavadasvarupam.
So since this is very long, I propose whoever would like to read, you can do one shloka, maybe it's the correct term, at a time. Who would like to go?
Aham bhavo yagya ime prajesha
Aham bhavo yagya ime prajesha
Dakshadayo ye bhavadadayascha
Dakshadayo ye bhavadadayascha
Svarlokapala kagalokapala
Svarlokapala kagalokapala
Nilokapala stavalokapala
Nilokapala statalokapala
Gandharva Vidyadhara Charanesha
Gandharva Vidyadhara Charanesha
Ye Yaksharaksho Raganaganata
Ye Yaksharaksho Raganaganata
Ye Varishinam Rishabha Pritinam
Ye Varishinam Rishabha Pitrinam
Daityendra Siddheshwara Danavendra
Daityendra Siddheshwara Danavendra
Anye Chayet Veta Pichacha Bhuta
Anye Chaye Preta Pishacha Bhuta
Kusmandaya Domriga Pakshadisha
Kushmandaya Domriga Pakshadisha
Yatkinchaloke Bhagavan Mahasvad
Yatkinchaloke Bhagavan Mahasvad
Ojasahasvad Balavat Kshamavat
Oja Sahasvad Balavat Shamavat
Viri Vibhutyatmavad Bhutarnam
Shri Vibhutyatmavad Bhutarnam
Tattvam Param Rupavadasvarupam
Tattvam Param Rupavadasvarupam
Aham bhavo yagya ime prajesha
Aham bhavo yagya ime prajesha
Dadayo ye bhavat adayascha
Dakshadayo ye bhavadadayascha
Alokapala kagolokapala
Lokapala kagalokapala
Lokapala stalakala pala
Lokapala stalalokapala. Would anybody else on the internet like to continue? there. Okay, we'll do word by word. Aham,
Aham.
myself, Brahmaji.
Myself, Brahmaji.
Bhava,
Bhava.
Lord Shiva.
Lord Shiva.
Yagya,
Yagya.
Lord Vishnu.
Lord Vishnu.
Ime,
Amen.
all these.
All these.
Praja Isha,
Raja Isha.
the father of the living
The
beings.
father of the living beings.
Daksha Adaya,
Daksha Adaya.
Daksha Marichi Manu, etc.
Daksha Marichi Manu, etc.
Yea,
Yeah.
those.
Those.
Bhavat,
Bhavat.
yourself.
Yourself.
Adayacha,
Adhayacha.
and the bachelors,
And the
Sanat
bach-
Kumar and his brothers.
And the bachelor, Sanat Kumar and his brothers.
Swarlokapala,
Swarlokapala.
the leaders of the heavenly planets.
The leaders of the heavenly planets.
Kagalokapala,
Kagalokapala.
the leaders of space travelers.
The leaders of space travelers.
Nrilokapala,
Nrilokapala.
the leaders of mankind.
The leaders of mankind.
Talalokapala,
Talalokapala.
the leaders of the lower
The
planets.
leaders of the lower planets.
Gandharva,
Gandharva.
the residents of Gandharva Loka.
The residents of Gandharva Loka.
Vidyadhara,
Vidyadhara.
the residents of the Vidyadhara planets.
The residents of the Vidyadhara planet.
Charana Isha,
Charana Isha.
the leaders of the Charanas.
The leaders of the Charanas.
Yea,
Yeah.
as also others.
As also others.
Yaksha,
Yaksha.
the leaders of the Yakshas.
The leaders of the Yakshas.
Raksha,
Raksha.
demons.
Demons.
Uraga,
Uraga.
snakes.
Snakes.
Naganatha, the
Naganatha.
leaders of Nagaloka below the earth.
The leaders of Nagaloka below the earth.
Yea,
Yeah.
others.
Others.
Va,
Va.
also.
Also.
Rishinam,
Rishinam.
of the
Of
sages.
the sages.
Rishava,
Rishabha.
of the chief.
The chief.
Pritrinam,
Pitrinam.
of the forefathers.
Of the forefathers.
Daitya Indra,
Daitya Indra.
leaders of the atheists.
Leaders of the atheists.
Siddha Ishvara,
Siddha Ishvara.
leaders of the Siddhaloka planets.
Leaders-
Spacemen.
Leaders of the Siddhaloka planet. Spacemen.
Danava Indra,
Danava Indra.
leaders of the non-Aryans.
Leaders of the non-Aryans.
Anye,
Anye.
besides them.
Besides them.
Cha,
Cha.
also.
Also.
Yea,
Yeah.
those.
Those.
Preta,
Preta.
dead bodies.
Dead bodies.
Pishacha,
Pisacha.
evil spirits.
Evil spirits.
Bhuta,
Bhuta.
Jinn.
Jinn.
Kushmanda,
Kushmanda.
a special type of evil spirit.
A special type of evil spirit.
Yada,
Yada.
aquatics.
Aquatics.
Mriga,
Mriga.
animals.
Animals.
Pakshi Adisha,
Bakshi Adisha.
giant eagles.
Giant eagles.
Yacht,
Yacht.
anything.
Anything.
Kimcha,
Kimcha.
and everything.
And everything.
Loke,
Loke.
in the world.
In the world.
Bhagavat,
Bhagavat.
possessed of bhaga or extraordinary power.
Possessed of Bhaga or extraordinary power.
Mahasvat,
Mahasvat.
of a special degree.
Of a special degree.
Oja Sahasvat,
Oja Sahasvat.
specific mental and sensual dexterity.
Specific mental and sensual dexterity.
Balavat,
Balavat.
possessed of strength.
Possessed of strength.
Shamavat,
Shamavat.
possessed of forgiveness.
Possessed of forgiveness.
Shri,
Shri.
beauty.
Beauty.
Kri,
Hri.
ashamed of impious acts.
Ashamed of impious acts.
Vibhuti,
Vibhuti.
riches.
Riches.
Atmavat,
Atmavat.
possessed of intelligence.
Possessed of intelligence.
Adbhuta,
Adbhuta.
wonderful.
Wonderful.
Arnam,
Arnam.
race.
Race.
Tatvam,
Datvam.
specific truth.
Specific truth.
Param,
Param.
transcendental.
Transcendental.
Rupavat,
Rupavat.
as if the form of.
As if the form of
Asvarupam,
Asvarupam.
not the form of the Lord.
Not the form of the Lord.
Okay, so before I read the translation, I'll do some invocation prayers that I didn't do earlier. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshur Umilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Translation. I myself, Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, great generators of living beings like Daksha and Prajapati, yourselves, Narada and the Kumaras, heavenly demigods like Indra and Chandra, the leaders of the Burloka planets, the leaders of the earthly planets, the leaders of the lower planets, the leaders of the Gandharva planets, the leaders of the Vidyadhar planets, the leaders of the Charanaloka planets, the leaders of the Yakshas, Rakshas, and Uragas, the great sages, the great demons, the great atheists, and the great spacemen, as well as the dead bodies, evil spirits, Satans, jinn, Kushmandas, great aquatics, great beasts, and great birds, etc. In other words, anything and everything which is exceptionally possessed of power, opulence, mental and perceptual dexterity, strength, forgiveness, beauty, modesty, opulence, and breeding, whether in form or formless, may appear to be the specific truth in the form of the Lord, but actually they are not so. They are only a fragment of the transcendental potency of the Lord. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. And I'm going to do this in chunks because it's long and it's got lots of juice. So we're going to do it in short chunks. Those in the list given above, beginning from the name Brahmaji, the first living creature within the universe, down to Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, Narada, and other powerful demigods, men, supermen, sages, rishis, and other lower creatures of extraordinary strength and opulence, including the dead bodies, Satans, evil spirits, jinn, aquatics, birds and beasts, may appear to be the Supreme Lord, but factually none of them is the Supreme Lord. Every one of them possesses only a fragment of the great potencies of the Lord. The less intelligent man is surprised to see the wonderful actions of material phenomena, as the aborigines are fearful of a great thunderbolt, a great and gigantic banyan tree, or a great lofty mountain in the jungle. For such undeveloped human beings, merely the slight display of the Lord's potency is captivating. So I'm going to pause there first. Yes. So this reminded me of another class that I gave on the different qualities of faith, and how the pious will serve, worship the demigods. Those in the mode of passion will serve, worship demons, and those in the mode of ignorance will worship evil spirits. So how we have different types of worship depending on our level of consciousness. And I found a conversation between Srila Prabhupada and Shyamasundar Das, describing 5 stages of coming to personal worship of Vishnu or Krishna. So Prabhupada describes even in this primitive stage, he's describing this initial stage of those that are surprised by the wonderful actions of material phenomena. Even in this primitive stage, as soon as there is something wonderful, natural phenomenon, they offer respects. The primitive man, the man in the jungle, as soon as he sees a big ocean, he offers his respects. As soon as he sees a big mountain, he offers his respects. As soon as there is a thunderbolt, this is called realization of the Shakti. Parasya Brahmana Shakti. This is Shakta stage, realization of God by seeing something wonderful. So this first stage of 5 is worshiping the energy of God, and in my understanding, it's the most impersonal. It's the most removed. So it's the first step by which one first would begin to worship Krishna, by worshiping his energy. So I believe it's in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes how some might worship him directly, or some might worship him indirectly by worshiping some of his energies. Even if one is worshiping demigods, and it's still really worshiping Krishna indirectly by worshiping a part and parcel of Krishna. Even if they don't know it, even if they don't have the correct understanding, they're still worshiping Krishna indirectly. So that's one thing I like. It's like, no matter what I worship, in some way I'm worshiping Krishna. So that's what I like. I like to interpret that as I can't go wrong by worshiping something. I'm still worshiping Krishna in some way. Those aren't Prabhupada's words. Those are my words. Okay, so let's continue. Let me find a place. Okay, so we finished with, for such undeveloped human beings, merely the slight display of the Lord's potency is captivating. A still more advanced person is captivated by the powers of the demigods and goddesses. Therefore, those who are simply astonished by the powers of anything in the creation of the Lord without any factual information of the Lord himself are known as Shaktas, or worshippers of the great powers. The modern scientist is also captivated by the wonderful actions and reactions of natural phenomena, and therefore is also a Shakta. These lower grade persons gradually rise to become Sauriyas, worshippers of the sun god, or Ganapatyas, worshippers of the mass of people, as Janata, Janardana, or Daridra Narayan, etc., in the form of Ganapati, and then rise to the platform of worshipping Lord Shiva in search for the ever-existing soul, and then to the stage of worshipping Lord Vishnu, the super soul, etc., without any information of Govinda, Lord Krishna, who is the original Vishnu. Now, I'll take another pause there. So the Ganapatya, at first I was kind of confused by that term, the mass of the people, or in the form of Ganapati. So the Ganapatya, that Prabhupada describes it as humanitarian. He describes that energy as distributed pantheism. So worshiping the masses as a collective as a collective display or potency of the Lord's energy. So describing the stages Shakta, Sauriyam, Ganapatya, then Shiva or Shaiva, and then finally one would come to the worship of Vishnu, though still in the impersonal form. So there's five stages of worship in the impersonal form, and then going from personal or from impersonal to personal. So those are the five stages that he describes, and of course, Prabhupada describes that the perfection of worship is to arrive at the ultimate personal conclusion after one, takes their time and goes through the five stages to get there. So this is one of those kinds of purports and explanations that I like, because it gives leniency for maybe like the slower ones like me, like I don't know how to do the direct paths. So there's like these slower paths that are designed for people like me. So I find that very encouraging. Okay, so back to the purport. We finished with Lord Krishna, who is the original Lord Vishnu. In other ways, some are worshippers of race, nationality, birds, beasts, evil spirits, Satans, etc. The general worship of Shani Deva, the Lord of distressful conditions, and Sitala Devi, the goddess of smallpox, is also common to the mass of people, and there are many foolish men who worship the mass of people or the poor class of men. So different persons, societies, and communities, etc., worship some of the potent manifestations of the Lord, wrongly accepting the powerful object as God. I'll take another pause here. I didn't look anything into Sitala Devi, the goddess of smallpox, or anything like that. I don't know. I found it kind of strange. But what I want to speak about is that last sentence. Worship some of the potent manifestations of the Lord, wrongly accepting the powerful object as God. So in Bhagavad Gita 4:12, Krishna speaks to that. Krishna and Prabhupada. There's a great misconception about the gods or demigods of this material world, and men of less intelligence take these demigods to be various forms of the Supreme. But actually the demigods aren't different forms of the Supreme. So Prabhupada in this purport, at least, he uses the word manifestation. So he doesn't use the word manifestation as in the Lord manifesting himself in his different appearances, but more manifestations in terms of his different creations. So I think that's a place that could that could be confusing at times to think of, because it says that these are potent manifestations of the Lord, and so that there's a distinction to be made, that these are manifestations in terms of his creation or his energy, not so much of like an avatar manifestation, not so much like an incarnation of the Lord. And so the demigods, no matter how powerful they might be, no matter, we can consider Brahma. We've talked about how he's like the most intelligent, the most gigantic, supreme living entity, and how still he doesn't know hardly anything about Krishna, to paraphrase some of his own words. And so no matter how potent, how powerful demigod, semi-demigod, they're merely different parts of the Lord. They're merely different fragments of the Lord, and not equal to the Lord. So we'll finish the purport here. So we finish with wrongly accepting the powerful object as God. But in this verse, it is advised by Brahmaji that none of them is the Supreme Lord. They are only borrowed plumes from the original Almighty Lord Sri Krishna. When the Lord advises in Bhagavad Gita to worship him alone, it is to be understood that worshiping Lord Krishna includes worshiping all that is mentioned, because he, Lord Krishna, includes everyone. So in that sentence, it's the analogy of watering the root instead of the individual branches, worshiping him alone, that includes everything else. When the Lord is described as formless in the Vedic literatures, it is to be understood that all these forms mentioned above, within the experience of universal knowledge, are different exhibitions of the Lord's transcendental potencies only, and none of them factually represents the transcendental form of the Lord. But when the Lord actually descends on the earth or anywhere within the universe, the less intelligent class of men also mistake him to be one of them, and thus they imagine the transcendence to be formless or impersonal. Factually, the Lord is not formless, nor does he belong to any of the multi-forms experienced within the universal forms. One should try to know the truth about the Lord by following the instructions of Brahmaji. Yes, so Krishna very clearly tells us to worship him alone, practically throughout the entire Bhagavad Gita, and particularly for me, like chapter 18, where he's maybe even more direct than where he is elsewhere, like in chapter 18, text 66. I'm going to add the word just in front because it makes it more like maybe modern lingo to me. Just abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. So it's pretty clear. Don't worship anything else. Don't waste your time. Anything that you worship gets power from me, right? Krishna speaking, not Eze speaking. Anything that you worship gets power from me. So just worship me directly. It's more effective. It's more efficient. It's more to the source. It's more direct. Yes, and then at the bottom of the verse, in the end of the verse, it describes how some less intelligent men, and I presume that includes women also, but in less intelligent men will think of the Lord as formless, and they think that when Krishna descends to the earth by his mercy and grace, I'll say we because I include myself in the less intelligent class of men, we tend to think of him as just another human being, maybe like a supreme, maybe like a very powerful, very potent historical figure, but still we bring Krishna down to our kind of puny level. And Krishna describes that in Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, text 11. He says, fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature in my supreme dominion over all that be. And it reminds me of many of the pastimes that we've talked about, like I don't know exactly the psychology of Brahma or Indra if they forgot that Krishna was supreme, but in different pastimes when Krishna is present here on earth, like Indra wants to flood, or he doesn't want, he floods Vrindavan because Krishna gets everyone to worship Govardhan Hill instead. And like, I don't know, I guess it makes sense. It can only make sense to me if like Indra forgot, oh, Krishna, this is Supreme Personality, because otherwise it just doesn't seem like he would even try to do something against him. Or like same thing for Brahma to kidnap the cowherd boys and the calves. Like it can only make sense to me that Brahma momentarily fell down to this level of thinking that that little boy Krishna is just like a powerful boy, but not the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because otherwise it wouldn't make sense to me that they would try anything against him. And a few weeks ago, I was watching Little Krishna. It's a little cartoon. I guess it's made for children. I found it really entertaining, and supposedly it's at least largely, if not entirely, based on scriptures. And so there's like a lot of pastimes of different demons coming to try to kill Krishna. And I get those demons are very much on the less intelligent class, because it doesn't make any sense to me to try to fight Krishna in any way. Like, it's impossible. Something I liked about watching the show is I never had the anxiety of what's going to happen to Krishna. I was telling Malini and Narayan, like when I watch maybe other shows or movies, like there's the anxiety of what's going to happen to the protagonist. And I never had that with little Krishna. Like, of course, nothing can happen to little Krishna. Like, it's Krishna. So one has to be less intelligent to try to fight him, or I would say take from him, but I don't want to say that because I know that in many ways I try to take from Krishna. But yeah, that's less intelligent too. Yes. So right in the end, Prabhupada gives us some instruction. One should try to know, and I don't find so much resistance to this should, because it says try, so I find it softer. Like, one should try. Okay, I can try. One should try to know the truth about the Lord by following the instruction of Brahmaji. And so, okay, let's try. Let's try to follow in the footsteps of Brahma, and to know the truth, about Krishna's potency, because this purport is so much about describing all of these whatever great mountains or great birds or different potencies of different entities, and how that's like insignificant in comparison to the Lord. So yes, Prabhupada writes that we might become bewildered by even a slight show of Krishna's potency instead of looking at the pure potency. So let's look at truly how powerful Krishna is. And so this takes us to Bhagavad Gita. You have a comment? And this takes us to Bhagavad Gita chapter 10. There's like an entire series of verses where Krishna gives like almost a similar example as in this verse, or like many verses where he gives examples of things that represent him, like whatever, of the fish or the aquatics, I'm the shark. Of the demigods, I am Vishnu, like tons of different examples of weapons. I'm the thunderbolt. Among cows, I'm the Surabhi, givers of abundant milk. Of procreators, I am Kandarpa, the god of love. And of serpents, I am Vasuki, the chief. So Krishna gives like tons of examples describing that the most of anything, the most of any category, the highest, the best, the most, is a representation of his potency. Not that like Krishna's limited to the potency of a shark, but that the shark represents him because it's like, I guess, like the most intense of aquatics or something. Similar to the thunderbolt. I guess I've heard that example a lot in Shastra, and I guess it's a really potent weapon, maybe the most potent weapon, a thunderbolt. In another place, it's described that Krishna's weapon, the how's this called? The Sudarshan Chakra. That's the most powerful weapon of all, even more than the Brahmastra weapons, even more than the thunderbolt, and is described that the sun god gave that to Krishna But then like, if we get a little bit closer, it's like that's more of like Krishna accepting, just like how we offer things to Krishna. Like we don't really give things to Krishna. Krishna already owns everything. But Krishna accepts it because he wants us to be able to give him something. So in the same way that the Sudarshan chakra, that was given to him by the sun god, but really it was already his. It's eternally Krishna's. Like even the sun god couldn't have existed without Krishna. So anything that the sun god or any of us can give to Krishna, really I wouldn't say it's like a formality, but it's more like a play. It's like a pastime. It's like a way that we get to enjoy and relish with Krishna by giving him things that are already his. So like that, Krishna is the most of everything. So following these instructions, let's try to know the truth. Let's look at how magnificent is Krishna in comparison to all of these, whatever, great, powerful potencies or something. So this takes us to the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, chapter 16, text 37. The origin of the material creation is Mahavishnu, who lies in the causal ocean. While he sleeps in that ocean, millions of universes are generated as he exhales, and they are annihilated when he inhales. So like even just that, he's creating all of this while he's sleeping. So like who knows what he can do when he's awake? He's doing all of this while he's sleeping. We can't even fathom what he can do while he's awake. Like, okay, I have some ability when I sleep. I can breathe too. I can breathe and I can sometimes snore and maybe move around a little bit. And then when I'm awake, my ability is exponentially greater. So I don't know. I can't even imagine Mahavishnu's doing all this while he's sleeping. I don't know. I can't even fathom what he can do if he ever awakens. So this Mahavishnu is a plenary portion of Vishnu, Govinda, Yasya Kala Vishesha. The word Kala refers to a plenary portion of a plenary portion. From Krishna or Govinda comes Balaram. From Balaram comes Sankarshan. From Sankarshan, Narayan. From Narayan, the second Sankarshan, already mind-boggling for me. From the second Sankarshan, Mahavishnu. So that right there, that's like 6 or 8 expansions later. That's the Mahavishnu that while he's sleeping creates the entire material creation. That's mind-boggling to me. So then, and also from Mahavishnu comes Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, and from Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. There we go. Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. And Kshirodakashayi Vishnu controls every universe. So that's now like 10 expansions away from Krishna, controlling every universe. So this gives an idea, Prabhupada writes, this gives an idea of the meaning of Ananta or unlimited. What is to be said of the unlimited potency and existence of the Lord? So I'll pause there with the verse. He has like 8 expansions later, while he's sleeping, he's creating all of these infinite many universes and annihilating them too. And then 2 expansions later, entering into every atom, into every core, the heart of every single minute, infinitesimally small particle of everything in the material and spiritual existence. And controlling that. And that's only a tiny, inconceivably small fragment of his potency. And then this verse also describes the coverings of the universe. And more or less the premise is that each covering is 10 times thicker than the previous. So the universe itself is 4 billion miles. I don't know if it's diameter or radius. I think it's diameter. But either way, that's pretty large. So there's that. And then each consecutive layer is 10 times bigger. So like the earth layer is 40 billion. Again, let's say diameter. The water covering beyond that is 400 billion. Fire, 4 trillion. The air is 40 trillion. Ether is 400 trillion, and then there's like 2 or 3 more, and then that's just one universe. And then it's described that there are at least millions of universes. So like in the Srimad Bhagavatam 1:15-13, it's described that this material world is only a part of the whole creation, in that this earth is only a fragment of the whole material world. So again, we have these like 400 trillion, or we're probably getting into quadrillions or quintillions miles of a radius for one universe, which is described being kind of like an atom, where you have the nucleus, which is very tiny in comparison to the electron cloud. Like if you, I believe the analogy or the way to visualize it is like if you had an orange in the center of a football field, the center, that's the nucleus, and then the length of the football field, that's the size of the electron cloud. And so in the same way, the actual universe that we consider to be the actual universe is quite tiny in comparison to then all of the coverings, all of the layers that extend and that are still a part of the universe. They're the covering. It's like an orange with a very thick peel, very, very thick peel. Yeah, so it's ginormous, inconceivably gigantic, and there's millions of these gigantic universes, again, which Mahavishnu is creating all this while he's sleeping. And then in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, but what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. And like my understanding is not just like this entire universe, but like my sense is that when it says this entire universe, it means the universe of universes, like the universe of all universes. So the entire material world, and even all of that, like all of these billions of millions of universes that are like quintillions of miles wide, that's only 1/4 of the Supreme Lord's energy. That's only 1/4 of the total energy of the total creation. And therefore he's called Ananta, because that's already like inconceivably, infinitely large. And then even that is only a part of the absolute. Yes. So that's like to put into perspective, right? There's like, okay, whatever, there's these beings described here who are powerful or whatever. Maybe like some are described, they're like powerful, like 10,000 elephants or something. And then like whatever, right? That's like less than an ant in compared to all that we can consider about Krishna. And even more, like that person who's 10,000 elephants strong wouldn't even exist without Krishna. So just to go there. So let's keep going. How powerful is Krishna in terms of pleasure and bliss? In the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila 156, it's described there are different grades and standards of prosperity. The standard of comfort and happiness conceived by a common man engaged in material labor is the lowest grade of happiness, for it is in relationship with the body. So that's even like, I'm just considering like, wow, great comforts of the body. And that's like, wow, something I look up to. The highest standard of such bodily comfort is achieved by a fruitive worker who by pious activities reaches the plane of heaven, or the kingdom of the creative gods with their delegated powers. But the conception of comfortable life in heaven is insignificant in comparison to the happiness enjoyed in the impersonal Brahman. And this Brahmananda, the spiritual bliss derived from impersonal Brahman, is like the water in a hoofprint of a calf compared to the ocean of love of Godhead. So this Brahmananda is, if this Brahmananda, the bliss of merging with the Brahma Gyoti, with the Brahman effulgence, if this were multiplied, I like numbers. If this were, these aren't my numbers, these are all things Prabhupada says. If this were multiplied 100 trillion times, it would still not equal even an atomic fragment of the ocean of transcendental bliss felt in devotional service. So let's do that again. If this were multiplied 100 trillion times, that's a lot of times, it wouldn't even equal an atomic fragment. So atomic fragment, that's like even such a tiny portion when we think of like an ocean, and then thinking of one atom within that ocean, practically non-existent. So multiplying this Brahmananda 100 trillion times, it wouldn't even equal an atom in the ocean of transcendental bliss. When one develops pure love for the Lord, he derives an ocean of transcendental happiness from the association of the personality of Godhead. And to qualify oneself to reach this stage of life is the highest perfection. I can't even conceive of like that quantity of like, oh, I'm attracted by the heavenly planets. Like, wow, that sounds enjoyable. There's like greater sense enjoyment. There's less suffering. That sounds nice. And then like, that's one drop compared to a hoof print of the impersonal bliss of Brahmananda. So that already like, ooh, Brahmananda, that sounds like really far out. And then multiplying that 100 trillion times is not even an atom of the total ocean that's, I'm pretty sure, constantly expanding, like everything in the spiritual world. I can't even begin to try to want to endeavor to process that. It's like so inconceivable to me, but it sounds pretty much infinite, like in every possible way imaginable. So those are some of the potencies of the Lord, some of the like inconceivably like infinitely infinite power, potency, potential, bliss, opulences of the Lord. Yes, so I'll read the translation again. I myself, Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, great generators of living beings like Daksha and Prajapati, yourselves, Narada and the Kumaras, heavenly demigods like Indra and Chandra, the leaders of the Burloka planets, the leaders of the earthly planets, the leaders of the lower planets, the leaders of the Gandharva planets, the leaders of the Vidyadhar planets, the leaders of the Charanaloka planets, the leaders of the Yakshas, Rakshas, and Uragas, the great sages, the great demons, the great atheists, and the great spacemen, as well as the dead bodies, evil spirits, Satans, jinn, Kushmandas, great aquatics, like I'm inserting there like the shark, great beasts and great birds, etc. In other words, anything and everything which is exceptionally possessed of power, opulence, mental and perceptual dexterity, strength, forgiveness, beauty, modesty, opulence, and breeding, whether in form or formless, may appear to be the specific truth and the form of the Lord, but actually they are not so. They are only a fragment of the transcendental potency of the Lord. And we just covered how they are really such an insignificant, tiny, 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 tiny fragment of the transcendental potency of the Lord.
Nice.
So I'll stop here and I'll open it up for any questions, comments, concerns, challenges, realizations, hopefully not challenges.
Enlivening. It's very enlivening. Yeah.
You feel enlivened?
Yes.
Dominique.
You know how it's described that the soul is like, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. How the soul is the size of it is like 1/10,000th of the tip of the hair.
Mm-hmm.
I always feel confused by that. Like, so if the material world is 1/4 of the size of all of existence, including the spirit, so the spiritual world is like 75% of all of existence, and the material world is extremely huge, and we are extremely tiny, then the spiritual world is not extremely tiny. It's unbelievable. It's 3 times as large as everything you just described. I just feel confused, like when we return to the kingdom of God, do we like expand big again? Thank you, Eze.
That's a great question to which I have no answer. I have absolutely no idea. I could speculate in different ways, but I don't know that that's helpful, because I can imagine, okay, well, if I'm tiny and then everything in the spiritual world is relative to me the same size, I wouldn't really know that I'm tiny. Like, to me, that metric only really makes sense using it for like a comparison in the material world, but I don't know if that's actually true. Let's turn to Dira or Malini.
You want me to go, dear Govinda? You want to go?
Malini, please comment and share. Hare Krishna.
That's something I really love anyway. So we are 10,000 of the tip of the hair right now too, meaning us, like the living soul within this body of Malini Devi Dasi is 10,000 of the tip of the hair, and still the consciousness that comes from the soul is pervading this entire body. And this entire body is a result of desire. So everything in spiritual life is based on desire. And because of my previous desire, which led also to activities, I have developed this body with my desire. And similarly, in a spiritual world, it's not like the spirit soul will express itself through its desire. And the spirit soul on the spiritual level, the desire is connected with the desire connected with serving Krishna. So the soul, in the same way that the soul is magnetizing, like attracting this body through attracting a certain combination of the three modes of material nature, like to create this big body. Thinking of this body, it's so enormous, like you were speaking about enormous and the orange and the football. Well, if we think of this body in comparison to the soul, which is giving the all energy of this body is given by that tiny particle of us as spirit soul. So it's really gigantic. It's inconceivable how the power, how amazing. In the Bhagavad Gita it says the soul is amazing, and the soul is so amazing. And so in spiritual world, it's the same is true, that through our desire we attract a certain type of body, a certain type of form, in order to serve the Lord in our unique way that's really aligned with our constitutional position. And only, my understanding is only when one merges in the Brahma Jyoti is one reduced to the size of the 10,000 of the tip of the hair. And that's why, in fact, nobody stays in the Brahma Jyoti, because the nature of the soul is to desire. And so the soul is going to desire materially and attract a material body, or the soul is going to desire spiritually and attract a spiritual body. And so the only place in the all, manifestation of the Lord, expansion of the Lord, and all that spiritual sky, it's in the Brahma Jyoti, where we find the soul just shining. That's all the soul does, it shines. And then that creates the Brahma Jyoti. But then no soul is going to stay just shining, because the soul have desire. It's the nature of the soul to desire. Is that a response to your question?
Yes, thank you.
Dear Govinda Prabhu, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Hare Krishna, I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate the perspective your class gave, Eze. It's deepening and expanding my perspective. All right, so perspective. So all of the creation, all material and spiritual creation exists within Krishna, and Krishna exists, and Krishna expands in fullness as the Paramatma in our heart. So within our heart, there's Krishna, and within Krishna, there's all of the material creation. So the soul is 1/10,000th the size of the tip of a hair, and Paramatma is Anu. It's Andantarasta Pramantrendra. It's you might say it's smaller than the soul, and within the Paramatma is in the entire creation, including every atom and planet and etc. So we're just going there to expand the mind-blowing inconceivability of where your class took us. And then this idea of 1/10,000th, yes. So the idea is like, well, my understanding is, so even if we did have microscopes that could see, I've heard that the coronavirus is 1/1000th the width of an eyelash. So that's what I've heard. Okay. So anyhow, so even if we did have microscopes that could see 1/10,000th the size of a tip of a hair, maybe there are, I don't know, but we wouldn't be able to see it unless we have eyes, that are purified enough to see spirit, to see spirit. So that's an important point too. So the 1/10,000th, that's to give us an idea, and I like what Malini expressed, so that pinpoint, smaller than pinpoint spirit spark in the body of an elephant, the consciousness is the symptom of the soul, it's the illumination of the soul. The soul is consciousness, and it's conscious. And so the consciousness spreads to the body of an elephant, or this body of an amoeba, or like that. Okay. And so just like it to give us an idea, but we need to be able to enter into the spiritual dimension. This term is used in Bhagavad Gita, Shastra Chakshus, Jnana Chakshus, seeing through the eyes of knowledge, seeing through the eyes of Shastra. So just like in terms of dimensions, an example, like let's say that we had an orange or a ball, and then there are flatlanders who can only perceive in length and width. They can't perceive in the third dimension of height. Okay, so then there's that orange, since we're doing orange metaphors today. There's that orange, and so for the flatlanders, they would experience the orange as, I guess some sort of like dark dot, dark depending on how the light casts its shadows, but they would experience the orange as like a dark dot, maybe just a few centimeters in diameter, and like that. But they're not really seeing the orange because they don't have aspect to the full dimensionality in which the orange exists. So similarly, still you can say, oh, the orange shows up as this dot 2 centimeters, whatever. So similarly, when the soul's given measurement, then it's like to sort of give us some idea within our mundane dimensional conception. At the same time, seeing the soul, that requires bhakti yoga, seeing the super soul like that. So those are a few things I wanted to express.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I like how you put that into perspective of like even whatever measurements we have of any spiritual phenomena, that's within our limited perception. Like I like the example you gave of the flatlanders. Like how I would describe it is if you slice an orange and then like you lay it flat on a plate, then a flatlander would see just like that line of just the very line that's the plate is making contact with the orange. And like, okay, you could measure whatever, it's just like you said, 2 centimeters, 2 inches, whatever. And then like that's so, that's such a reductionistic view of what the actual thing is, that like, it's partially irrelevant, though it can give us some kind of an idea of something. So I appreciate that example. Would anybody else like to share? Oh, I see, Kim, you have your hand raised.
Yes, just the one thing that your class brought back to mind for me was the numbers being so huge. Like that's one thing I started noticing early when I started reading more of the Vedas and Bhagavatam, is that they had a perception of numbers that seems to be so far beyond where that was very faith inspiring, because I felt like that showed that the scripture was inspired for me. Just where would humans come up with these concepts of numbers that were just so beyond mind's ability, especially at the time. And other things I remember, it just that specifically, but also like I remember reading about space travel in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and how, you know, it seemed like time.
Kim, I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear you anymore. It cut out. Oh, okay, you're gone. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I imagine she'll be back soon.
Speaking about space traveling.
That's what she was speaking of. Well, I mean, there was spacemen are mentioned in the verse.
Yes.
There's a connection there.
Yeah.
I don't know much about space travel. I don't know if you were prompting me, but
Narada Muni is known as the eternal spaceman, and there's a particular upper planet beyond the heavenly planets, not quite Brahmaloka, called Siddhaloka, and everyone there, they have particular powers to travel through space to any planet. I'm sorry Kim's not here. What her sharing, I could so much relate to that when I first started reading Prabhupada's books and the Bhagavatam, and that really just kind of like strengthened my trust that this is an extraordinary literature, not just written by some smart guy, or, you know, something like that. Because like because even I really like that you did the 10 to the 7th power in covering the universe. Even if we look at the universal coverings when it gets into the pentillions and quadrillions, that gets into the sort of dimensions of the universe when you look at modern astronomy. I'm not like validating modern astronomy, but it just when I first started reading it, I go like, yeah, because like our modern conception of like, okay, the people in India that day, they were just coming out of the primitive caveman stage. So I see that like our modern conception of what was happening 5,000 years ago when the Bhagavatam was written, that is what it's not that the Bhagavatam's so off, that is so off, because it doesn't match. And I would see like, no, this isn't just like, this is brilliant like modern science. This is beyond anything I'd studied in science class, in astronomy, university courses, things like that. So I got like, yeah, this is for me, that just strengthened my trust. This is divinely inspired literature. This is not from some ordinary brain, even a smart brain. So I very much related to what I heard from Kim completely.
Yes, I've heard you say something similar, like not so much in relation to numbers, but like the not even a Hollywood movie writer could come up with the far out stuff, and that actually increases your faith that no ordinary human came up with it. And I hear you something similar in a mathematical sense, like in relation to the numbers and the astrology of it. Like it's inconceivable that any human, even a smart brain, the human, would come up with this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Would anybody else like to share any questions, comments, concerns, questions? Dr. Keith.
What do you guys think would be like 10,000 times bigger than you? I was thinking like a football field or something like that. Just trying to, imagine what the soul would look like compared to the tip of the hair.
Aha.
Something like that. Football field.
Yeah, that sounds good. Maybe like a football stadium or something. I don't know.
Around on the tip of the hair. Like
Well, 10,000 times, let's say, a 6-foot human being. So we get into 60,000. That gets into like 12 miles, which is a lot bigger than a football stadium.
Okay.
12 miles is like almost a distance from Alachua to Gainesville.
Okay.
To perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, if the soul is a very long string like that, then yeah, we could stack them. All right, final round. Any final questions? Any final comments? I'm sorry, Kim's.
Fun class.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.